Welcome, friend, to episode 17 of my podcast, The View from the Crow's Nest. And I am Romeo Crow, and I welcome you and thank you for listening in with me today. So today I'm going to do a little review of my day, a couple of thoughts that I had, and then I guess some takeaways that I was thinking of off the back of it. Today, in fact, the last few days, I got roped into helping my brother out with his new business. I had actually mentioned this about a week ago, and I had said on the podcast that I wouldn't be helping because I had other projects on, and he asked me and lent a bit of emotional pressure on me, and I relented and said yes, I'd help. But that leads on to the kind of second part and the third part. So he has put together a team. In fact, he sold his business a few years ago, and a couple of guys that used to work with him on that business have come on board for this one, along with his co-creator of this business. So there's now a kind of team of 4 of them. And they've got some excellent skills and experience between them, some very high-level skills and experience, and they've got some external developers working on the website and whatnot. But what they lack is some skills and experience specifically with regards to marketing and digital marketing. And so that was where my brother had asked me to help out. And the problem was, 1, he's my brother, so of course I'm going to help him. But 2, he's absolutely right. I have certain skills in those areas, and therefore it wouldn't make real sense for, I can help out a lot more quickly than other people can. And this got me to thinking today that all of us have, again, a unique set of skills, a unique set of experiences that have given us some expertise and some knowledge in something. The problem is most of us, most of the time, don't realise that, because we either take it for granted, or we've had those skills for so long, or those ideas for so long, that for us they just seem normal. But what we forget is, to other people, they are so beyond normal, they're so highly valuable. And something that might take us, 10 minutes, half an hour, could cost somebody else a hell of a lot more than that in terms of both time and investment to learn how to do something. Again, it's that classic case of the plumber comes round, stops the leak in 3 minutes by turning a screw, and bills you for 100 quid, and you say, well, hang on a minute, you're only here for 3 minutes. So he scribbles out the invoice, changes it, and he said, okay, here you go, it's £1 for turning the screw, it's £99 for knowing which screw to turn. And you've probably heard me tell that anecdote before, but I love that story because it's so true. All of these years that you've spent, that I've spent, that we've spent in various different jobs, even if those jobs seem unrelated, in our various pursuits, our hobbies, our interests outside of that, in our own businesses, if you've started your own business, they may seem unrelated, but there's a certain thread through everything that you've done, everything that I've done, which might not be so obvious to ourselves. It's like the wood for the trees, you can't really see it because you're standing on it. In fact, I heard the anecdote put by Daniel Priestley, who I really, really like, and I suggest you check out if you're interested in entrepreneurship. He says, everyone's standing on a mountain of value. The problem is you can't see your own mountain, because it's like when you are climbing a mountain, everything else you look at is on the horizon, other peaks, other troughs, valleys, etc. You don't realise exactly how high you are or what's underneath you. And again, that's another good analogy, because we spend all our time climbing our own mountains, not realising and not maybe seeing the path or the thread that links it through, etc. So it's worth taking a time to reflect on your own skill set, your own expertise, and pat yourself on the back for the ability to bring that to bear on the tasks and jobs and projects that you do, and that you make it seem quite effortless and you do things quite quickly. But actually, a lot of other people take a lot more time to get through that if they could, because they don't have your abilities. So pat yourself on the back for having those skills. And then, secondly, realise that they are valuable to other people. They are, really valuable to a lot of other people. And this brings me on to the other thing that I was musing on today, which is, so I redid a landing page, basically, or redid the website, but it's just in the form of a landing page, effectively a squeeze page as the start of a funnel for my brother. And there were things about it that still needed to be changed, and it took me a few hours, and I sent it over, and I was like, okay, well, we still need to do X, Y, Z, change this, that, the other. And my brother was like, listen, it's already 10 times better than it was. In fact, a lot more than 10 times better. And the other changes, yes, you could make them, but you don't understand how much better it is. And that kind of reminded me of another key part of this as well. It's really tempting when you're working on something, if you care about your work, and I'm assuming if you're listening to this, you probably do care about your work. You tend to, we're all perfectionists. We see the flaws in the work that we're doing, and in fact we see far more flaws in the work that we're doing than most people will notice. And that leads on to this other concept which I've talked about a lot. I'm not sure if I've actually talked about it on this podcast yet, but I generally talk about it a lot, which is Pareto's principle, otherwise known, or Pareto's law, otherwise known as Pareto's law, otherwise known as the 80-20 principle. And this is an incredibly powerful idea that you can apply to so many things. And the basic idea is this, that 80% of the effort that you put into something, for example, will result in 20% of the benefits. Conversely, 20% of the effort you put in will result in 80% of the benefits. Now, 80-20 isn't hard and fast. It could be, 95-5, 99-1. The point is, almost everything in life is not balanced at 50-50. It's not you put in more effort, you get more reward. For example, and you can apply this to so many things. So, for example, look in your wardrobe, and you'll probably find that 20% of your clothes you wear 80% of the time, for example. The actual reasoning came from economics. This Italian economist 150 odd years ago, Vilfredo Pareto, I think, he basically discovered that, was it to do with peas actually? No, maybe it was to do with money. That in Italy, I think it was, 20% of the people owned 80% of the wealth. And then he looked in other places and found that 20% of his peas were giving 80% of his yield, literally in growing food and vegetables, etc. So the idea is that when you're doing your own work, you get quite quickly, you get 80% of the quality done. You spend about 20% of the time and you get about 80% of the overall quality finished. But then, because you're a perfectionist, because you see the flaws in your own work, I see the flaws in my own work, you then spend much, much longer time, 80% more time, just to squeeze that last 20%. Or 10% to get to 90%, and then you spend 90% of your time getting that last 10%. Now, unless you are an Olympic grade athlete and you're trying to literally shave the 0.01 off of your 100 meter sprint or what have you, then unless you're a world class performer, no one notices that last 5 or 10%. And I've heard this in languages, for example. If you want to learn a language, you can spend a relatively short amount of time to learn about 80% of the vocabulary in use in most languages, in sort of common daily use. But you'll spend a hell of a lot more time to learn the more abstract stuff that actually you generally won't use. So you can apply this to anything. And today I was working on the Grip the Sky experience, and there's a couple of technical bugs which I've spent probably about 3 or 4 days trying to iron out. And actually, reflecting on it today, this is a classic 80-20 job. Most people won't even notice if I took out this particular functionality that I wanted. They won't notice that it's missing, because it's not missing, it's just a nice to have. But I want it, and I notice it's missing, and I notice that I can't quite get it right. And so I'm trying to improve it, but I realised I spent 3 or 4 of my sessions, of my days, trying to fix this, when in actual fact, I probably should have just got rid of it, at least at the beginning, and just moved on with something else. So this is a reminder to myself, a reminder to you that twofold. Number one, you are standing on a mountain of value. You really have some expertise, and you might not realize it, but a great exercise will be to really work out what that expertise is. And then a second exercise is how you can benefit other people with that expertise, how you can give value. And it doesn't have to be financially, one for somebody paying you for it. There's plenty of ways that you can help other people and give value with your expertise. But try and discover that really valuable exercise. The second part is that just because you notice in your work that there are some mistakes or flaws or things that could be improved, 80-20, most people, once it gets to a certain point, most people won't notice those improvements. They really won't. And the third point is flip that back on yourself. You'll spend far more time trying to close that gap between perfection and where you're currently at. And actually, you probably don't really need to do that. And I'm talking to myself first and foremost amongst everybody here. So those are my thoughts today. That's what I was after. Yes, my brother managed to pull me back into doing a project that, somebody else's project that wasn't on my agenda. Although I believe in the project, and actually the initial response has been really, really encouraging. So I think he could well be onto a big winner here. But time will tell. I will report back in future podcasts. And outside of that, I've been still reading this 1 Million Followers by Brendan Kane that I started yesterday. I feel that he goes a bit too quickly for probably most people, and I think his information is very good, his ideas are very good, but I think he assumes too much of a technical background for the people reading. Fortunately, I have at least some idea of what he's talking about, so I'm able to follow and understand the concepts and the reasoning behind it. But I think a lot of people might struggle, which is a shame because I think I'm only 3 chapters in, but I think there's some high quality stuff in there. But principally, so far, 3 chapters in, it's definitely helped me to remember that, again, like anything in any business nowadays, or any days really, there's 2 sides to it. One is creating a great product, and the second one is engaging people so that they want that product. And the underpinning part of all of that is relationships. It's all about relationships, and the days of just broadcasting out there to people and assuming people will react and buy, I think are long gone, and also a bit soulless. So moving forward, I mean, I've already been doing this for the last bunch of years, but it's a reminder that I'm on the right track. It's about building those relationships, and if that means less people that I'm speaking to, but a higher quality, I'm happy with that. So consider how you might use that if you're in business, how that might affect your business, and there's plenty of books and ideas that will go far more into depth about that. Particularly, I would recommend Daniel Priestley, who I mentioned earlier. His book, Oversubscribed, or his first book, Key Person of Influence, I think are 2 almost fundamental books to read if you're going into business now for yourself. Or, in fact, if you're thinking of, monetizing in some way your mountain of value. So if you want to know any more about any of that, if you want to ask me any questions, if you want me to cover anything, if you want me to uncover anything, then please do come and see me on Twitter at Romeo Crow. As always, I would love to hear from you, and I massively appreciate you taking your time to listen to me rabbit on. I hope there was something of use. Have a great day. Take care. Bye.